All right. I think we are live. Yay. Awesome sauce. All right, let me copy. I think we're good now. I don't hear I hear just a little bit, but not a lot. Let me get the comments going. All right. Then we will post that in the chat and get started. Hey, everyone. I am so excited to be back. Oh, I want to take this out. Give me 1 second. I want to remove. Can you see the live viewer comments show up on the StreamYard? Can you see that on your screen?
Yes.
Okay. Let me go to comments. Okay, Ross said we see you. Awesome, there we go. Okay, I'm excited now. Now we can get started. Hey everybody, welcome to Live with Renay. I'm so excited to be back. And as you know, each Sunday, we will be here to share some tips, tricks, and tools for business, leadership, self-development, and so much more. And this season, we've got some exciting guests, and I'm really just happy to be back to share the wealth. And if you know me, you know that I want everyone to win in life, and I want you guys to win big, whether you're working for yourself or you're working for someone else. So let's dream big. And you can follow me on all social media platforms. I am Renay Butler. So let's get started. So today I have special guest Patrice McKenzie. Thank you so much for accepting my invite to come and talk to our viewers. Super excited to be here today.
It's an honor. Thank you so much for thinking of me.
Yeah, so ironically, we talked about having this conversation before the incidents that happened last Wednesday. And so last Wednesday, or 2 Wednesdays ago almost, for me, it was a really sad day in history that we have a sitting president who would encourage Americans to go and storm the Capitol. So given those events and you being in the public eye, tell me how you felt. Like, what are you feeling? And now that we're coming on to inauguration, and we're going to have a new president and a new vice president who's also our soror, what's your desire for the future of this country?
So I think that the incidents of 2 weeks ago show us that there are people who are not committed to democracy for all. And that is unfortunate that in 2021, we are still fighting very similar battles. I also think that it was a very, very scary experience for members of Congress, for their staff, people who work in the Capitol building. And as a former staffer, my heart just sank when I realized what was going on. I just can't even imagine. So I know I've been in situations where working for a public office, you can't lock the door. So you feel very exposed and very vulnerable to the public in a way that if something happens, you're not always certain that you can be protected. And I think that's a feeling that is hard to sort of put into words and to quantify or articulate sometimes. Mm-hmm. But I am grateful to all of the members who made the effort to uphold their oath to the Constitution, to still conduct the business of the American people, and to be bold and courageous in calling out the cowardice, the crime, and the betrayal of their colleagues who were not supportive, who were not doing the work of the people and not fulfilling their obligation as members of Congress and public servants.
And I think, that you say that they take an oath. And just to see that, they're saying now that maybe some people were involved that are members of the Senate, it's so disheartening. And we talked yesterday briefly, and just to learn that, some people are sitting in these offices that doors are wide open and you've got no protection, from the outside world. That was really scary yesterday for me. So I can only imagine how you, as well as your colleagues, and how terrifying that was for members of the Senate, considering it was, or members of Congress, considering it was Americans. It wasn't like it was an attack from, I want to say Oconus from the military world, but attack from, international threats. It was Americans. So that really broke my heart. And I'm still trying to process it all. So tell us a little bit about, so Patrice is a community advocate, political extraordinaire, as well as a speaker. Tell us a little bit about some of the positions that you've held or that you would like to hold. Do you have political aspirations yourself?
Well, I will start with your first question, which is positions I have held in the past. I have served as an HR manager. I have a background in special event planning. I also have served as a staffer to then California Speaker Karen Bass. Mm-hmm. I also have been a nonprofit executive, and now I work as deputy chief of staff to a school board member in the Los Angeles Unified School District. Now, in terms of the future, I would one day like to be a lobbyist, potentially. Also interested in serving or being a elected official. Don't have a defined path or timeline identified just yet. I think that it will happen when it's supposed to and happen when it's meant to. Mm-hmm. So in the meantime, I will continue to serve my community, to continue to do good public service, and should an opportunity present itself, I will move when it's right.
Well, I'm excited for you. I absolutely, whatever you need help with, I will help you, because I just love you to death. And so many people want to help, but don't know how to help. So let's get into our topic today, considering we've got so many of us who are, angry, we're hurt, we're upset. How do we take that anger and make it useful? Like, what can we do to put it into action, to become, some type of community activist, even from the lowest level to the highest level? Can we talk about some of that?
Sure. I will start by saying that for me, all politics is local, and that I think that people tend to ignore the value and the real role and purpose of public service at the local level because you don't hear that much about it. Like, if you're not watching local news or reading your local newspapers, you don't always get a chance to know what your city council members are doing, what your county board of supervisors are doing, what your school board is doing, what your state legislature is doing, for that matter, too. And many of the things that have the most direct impact on your quality of life day to day are happening at that local level. So when the trash doesn't get picked up on time, you have potholes that need to be filled, the lights don't come on, or the water is not running, those are not things that you would call 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue for. It's right. Probably that person who walked past in the grocery store and didn't speak to, that has the ability to make change in all of those areas. So I think that what I challenge people to do is find an issue that you care about. If your issue is public education, if it's clean water, if it is economic development, job creation, and identify the branch of government that has the most impact on that service or on that issue. And just track the issues on the agenda for that body and submit public comment. You can interact with your member by social media. Social media is definitely a very powerful way for people to have engagement with their member. Their elected officials themselves or their staff are monitoring their social media comments very, very closely and very, very carefully. With a lot of bodies meeting virtually now, you can send your public comments by email or on a website form, so you don't have to go and stand in the line and wait for them to call your name. So there's a lot easier points of access for communication, for sharing your ideas, for sharing your thoughts, and for also have that direct point of access to your member. There's also opportunities at the very local level if you wanted to be more involved in the grassroots level to either join a club, be it a club that's affiliated with the party of your choice. There are central committees for the party of your choice. And there's also the state party for the party of your choice also has a body that votes on leaders, they vote on policy positions, they vote on endorsements, they vote on how they spend money. And all those are volunteer positions that people can get involved with. And then on the policy side, if people are looking to be involved that way, there are boards and commissions that are appointed at the local and the state level that people can get involved with. There's typically an application process, and you're either interviewed or matched for a board or commission based on your area of expertise. For some boards and others, you may not have a body of knowledge in that subject area, but it is a tremendous learning opportunity, and it's also a tremendous policy-making opportunity. So that's a way for people to get involved as well.
Okay. What would you say the first step would be? Go on a website, pick up the phone. How would people know kind of that first step to get involved?
Uncle Google.
Uncle Google.
I love that. Is a good friend of ours.
Okay.
Most public agencies have very vibrant and robust websites. I will say that in my research, I have found that information on Democratic Party, Democratic Social Central Committees, etc., has been more available and accessible than the Republican process.
Okay.
I just in my experience, I don't know if that's true in other states, but in California, the Republican Party's process is not as transparent and not as clear as the Democratic Party's process. So I just encourage people, but whatever your party affiliation is, there is a local barrier point or entry point. And if you have the ability to sort of make that inquiry and find out how you can get involved, I would encourage you to do so.
Awesome. So let's talk about Stacey Abrams for a minute. She is like a one-woman machine. I saw a meme that said, yeah, sex is great, but have you ever flipped the Senate? And I was just like, wow. I mean, this woman, and I just love her story of, she ran for governor, she lost the election, she didn't go back and sulk. She said, okay, I got you. And she has come back and just created a massive movement to register voters and get voters out to vote, and has literally helped to win this election and to flip Congress. And I think so many should at least be inspired by her story. You being a political advocate and out there, with everyone, and I know that Kamala Harris, and tell us a little bit about, yes, she did change the world, Celia. If you guys have any questions, just drop your questions in and we'll get to them. Tell us a little bit about how she did that.
So let us just say that Stacey Abrams had that governor's election stolen from her. Because there was literally the purging of about 55,000 Black and brown voters in the state of Georgia during that election cycle. And I believe Sister Abrams lost that election by 54,000 votes. I don't like to put my tin hat on and buy into conspiracy theories, but sometimes deductive reasoning leads you to a conclusion.
Amen.
But even prior to her running for governor, she had a very distinguished career in the state legislature in Georgia, where she served as the minority leader of the Georgia State House. But prior to that, she also spent a number of years through the New Georgia Project, registering voters, doing voter outreach, doing voter contact, talking to people. And that organization has been on the ground for well more than 10 years. So she has had a very significant time investment in people, a very significant time investment in doing relationship building a very significant time investment in identifying issues that people care about and being able to elevate those and having conversations with those people about those issues. So what we saw was the culmination of a number of years of on the ground investment, in addition to a number of organizations like Black Voters Matter, the Black Male Voter Project, Fair Fight, etc., that these groups have been doing work on the ground, talking to voters and finding ways to connect with voters outside of sort of traditional means and traditional sort of like campaign cycles. And that's how you really build long-term sustained engagement, long-term sustained base building, movement building, and people who are now coming into the process. You have to find ways to add voters into the process in order for our democracy to really work. So my hat goes off to Stacey Abrams, all the leaders in Georgia, all the people that were on the ground that are doing that hard work, because that kind of organizing day in, day out, year in, year out, it is exhausting. And it is very, very, it wears on you. It requires a lot of energy. It requires a lot of personal sacrifice. So I commend people for that work. It is vital, it is necessary, and it needs to be replicated and scaled and done in other states. There is no reason why it cannot be taken to other communities and done to be able to continue to build out and expand the voting base.
No, I absolutely agree with you. That grassroots is absolutely the key to winning elections. I was reading a little bit about Barack and Michelle Obama and their path to the White House. And one of the things that Michelle Obama said was, we knocked on doors and we sat in people's living room. She said, because we wanted people to understand that we were more alike than we are different, and that it's through just mere conversations that won them the election, and people, just being able to see their faces and to touch them and to really relate just to the human person, not what you see on TV. And so she said that it, just like you just said, that work is exhausting. They were talking about their schedule, how they were flying back and forth every single day and going from, one state to the next. And they were literally in people's homes every single day. And I was just like, wow, I could not imagine Monday through Sunday, along with making sure that we didn't miss any of our children's, games or school things and doing homework. And then you fly back out and you go here and, you're knocking on hundreds of doors per day. That is a lot of work. So let me ask you this. For people who can't commit to that rigorous of a schedule, what are some of the smaller things that people can do to just get involved outside of donating money? I think most of the people, at least in my age group, we are capable of donating money. So we donate money. We may do things once or twice a month, or a few times a year. What are the things that the average person, let's say, has a family, has children, can do to really get involved and make a difference?
I would say that in addition to donating money, you don't have to give a lot of money if you are giving money.
Mm-hmm.
Like small dollar donations really matter. And I personally think that it's important for me to invest in the people who are elevating the issues and the values and the vision that I care about. So I make those investments. In the same way that I give to NPR monthly, I give to Black women candidates monthly. So that even if it's, $5 or $10 a month here or there, especially if I can't vote for them, I'm going to give them money. But what you can also do is there are opportunities to talk to your friends and neighbors, that person-to-person contact, and also coming from a reliable, trusted source. So if you are that person in your circle, you being a messenger on someone's behalf is priceless. Because in any campaign, what you have are three primary resources, and that is time, money, and people. You can typically find more money You can raise more money. Not saying it's easy, but it can be done.
Mm-hmm.
You can typically find more volunteers. But no matter what cycle you're working in, you are never going to buy yourself any more time. So time being the resource that is most precious for all people, ourselves, candidates, etc. If they know that Renay has a platform like Live with Renay and she can talk to 10, 20,000 people, and Renay says, hey, I like that Stacey Abrams person. You know, we should all go ahead and get involved. If you live in Georgia, go find a way to make some phone calls, send some text messages, send some postcards, knock on doors, and you now are touching 10,000 potential voters.
Mm-hmm.
That is gold for someone. You just having that kind of a conversation. Or if you say, oh, hey, I really like her. I'm going to invite her to my house to meet some of my friends.
Mm-hmm.
The opportunity to put a candidate in front of voters in that kind of way is priceless. So those are small things that we can do. And you will be surprised at how candidates are typically pretty accessible. I mean, maybe not the presidential candidates, because there's a little bit of a higher barrier to entry in terms of being able to have them come to a fundraiser, but they will come.
Right, yeah.
For sure, at the local level, your city council candidates, your school board candidates, county boards of supervisors, and even judges that are elected. Those candidates certainly are people that we have access to or should have access to. So, if there's a phone number or an email, send an inquiry and say, hey, I'd like to get to know you better. I have picked up the phone and called the phone number on many old campaign material that's come to my house in the mail. Hi, I saw this number. I'm interested in learning more. And in today's time, you'd be surprised how often it's the candidate's actual cell phone number. They answer the phone. And at that point, now you have direct contact and a direct relationship and a direct opportunity to share your ideas, share your thoughts, and to get involved.
That is so true. Roz, if you're still on, post, I can't remember the young lady's name that was campaigning for, I can't remember his name. I'm having a brain freeze today. But we actually was a person campaigning for governor of Maryland, and she was working on behalf of his campaign and coordinating events. And Roz and I don't even remember how we met her, but or maybe Roz got the invite. I don't remember, but she hosted an event at her house, invited her friends over. He literally did like a 15-minute speech on, here's who I am, here's my experience, here's what I want to do with Maryland, here's my platform. And we were like, oh, okay, I would vote for you. So that's good that you said that. And I'll just share another quick story. So my grandmother grew up during the civil rights, and she was very, very active. And at any given moment in our house, there were people from, if you wanted to have a political career, I don't know who she was. And some of this I didn't even learn until at her funeral. I'm like, okay, lady, who were you? Like, you had to get the okay from her. She worked for a lot of prominent judges. Yes, it was Ben. And so almost every night, people were in our house. And my grandmother, was like, I don't want to use the word entertaining. She wasn't feeding them, and, she would offer drinks or snacks or something like that, but they weren't always eating dinner. But just having conversations, political conversations about, what their goals were, what they wanted to do. And if, my grandmother said yes and backed you, she made phone calls to everybody. Hey, we're going to get behind this person. And, until the day she died, she was going to Annapolis at least twice a month to either speak to different local representatives or talk about issues that were happening in the communities. And so I really love what she did. And it's so funny because everyone's looking at me now like, so what you gonna run for?
Now, to your point about Annapolis, I was very struck by the model of Maryland state legislature, because even though it's not full-time legislature, they have their sessions in the evening so that people can come and participate. I think that is brilliant. So it makes it the barrier to entry is so much more accessible because the meetings are at night. You can go after work. You're not taking a full day off of work to travel across the state. It just really makes it more accessible to people. Whereas here in California, they have full-time legislatures that they meet the year round pretty much. But there are times when they're in their home districts. But if you are going to Sacramento, like for me living in Southern California, that's an airline ticket. It's an hour flight. I have to, block off my day from work. And it can become a barrier for people that don't have the access to travel in that way, don't have the dollars, don't have the time, don't have the flexibility within their work schedule. So it does kind of make it almost not as accessible for the public in that way as it could be. So I really, really enjoyed going to Annapolis to the House of Delegates in Maryland and being able to see the process happen in another state.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm like 15 minutes from Annapolis. So I'm always there especially when we do AKAJ in Annapolis and, some other things. But I really admire my grandmother and all that she did, as well as everyone who's out here day to day in the community fighting for us. And I don't know that politics is my passion. Should something come along that sounds really good that I might be interested in doing, I might consider it. But right now I'm good working behind the scenes and donating money and kind of getting in where I fit in, so to speak.
But where you fit right now is really valuable because your work with gold grinders, pouring into these young people and mentoring and creating opportunities to expose students to various career paths. That is not to be downplayed and not to be ignored in terms of the significance and the value that it has.
Well, thank you. I definitely appreciate that. When we finished the Teen Summit over the summer, as Gold Grinders was trying to pivot to a virtual platform, as soon as the Teen Summit was over, I think Roz and I were calling each other at the same time. We were like, you know what? Got to do something for, our boys. And we literally stayed on the phone for just a couple of hours to put together the You Matter Summit. We planned it in a day. We figured out, okay, who do we want to invite? Who do we know? And I think that we were able to put together a life-changing summit. And it's something that we're going to continue to do for the boys and to bring in our local representatives and have them really pour into the boys and how, at least it was important for me that they learn how to be leaders in their homes. And that starts young, learning certain skills, being able to lead a family, leaders in the classroom at school, and then leaders in their community. So those were the focus areas for us with the You Matter Summit. And we just had some dynamic speakers, and shout out to Malcolm Augustine, who's one of our local representatives as well. He is, every time I call him, he picks the phone up, or if I send a text, he responds right away. So a shout out to him. He's one of our Maryland senators, so very appreciative. And to everyone else. Yes, the summit was fantastic. And Jay is on. Thank you, Jay. He did a wonderful workshop with our boys. And I think all of this building of community all ties into where we move politically. Because if we are solidified as a community, then we can all go to the polls. We are all working on the same issues. And I think that that's important. Women, I'm going to do another live about women in leadership, but I don't want it to just be women that are changing the world now. Women have seemed to take over. It's how do we get our boys and our men to do the same things and moving mountains.
Well, I think that the men are doing that. They always have done that. I think what is happening today is that women are finally getting credit for the work that they have been doing for years and years and years.
That's a good point.
Let's keep it a buck.
Yeah.
There were sisters on faculty and staff at Alabama State University who organized the Montgomery bus boycott before Martin King got to count.
That's true.
Before he even showed up in Montgomery, these women had organized this boycott. They were, after hours, sneaking into the building, making their copies and doing the things that we do to organize people, talking to our friends, talking to our neighbors, talking to our sorority sisters, etc. And, moving and doing but that work isn't always recognized or acknowledged. So I think what we're seeing today is that the work and the value and the leadership that women have is finally being elevated and amplified in a way that has not been before.
And coming to the forefront.
Come back to the point about voting and its importance. Mm-hmm. Voting is a critical step in the process, but it is the first step. Mm-hmm. After you vote to elect somebody, you then have to start having conversation with them. You have to talk about what your priorities are, how your priorities line up with their priorities. And if there's a need to shift their priorities, how do you then have the conversation to make that shift happen? That's when your advocacy comes in, where you go to their office and you meet with them and you say, I'm interested in clean water. I don't know that I see that on your legislative portfolio. How do we add that to your portfolio? And here are my 2 ideas on how to do so. We have to have those conversations. It's an ongoing process. So you don't just elect somebody to represent you and you send them off to do the work, and then you show up in 4 years and vote for them again or not. It is ongoing engagement. It's ongoing discussion. It's ongoing dialogue, ongoing process. Like, for example, I'm going to be honest and transparent and say, I am a registered Democrat. Within the Democratic National Committee's platform that they've adopted for this 4-year cycle, there are some really significant issues and some really significant policy conversations that are in that platform. There are, statements about civil rights, social justice, economic parity, all kinds of topics and things that we care about, that what we need to do is make sure that we are holding our elected leaders accountable from the local level at your city council up to the federal branch and the executive branch in terms of how they govern. So we as people have the ability to really have tremendous power, tremendous influence, and tremendous voice in the process. It is up to us to amplify our voices, to organize and build that people power that really propels policy forward.
And you make a great point about holding our officials accountable. When we did the You Matter Summit, and for those of you listening, if you weren't able to join us, it's on YouTube, Gold Grinders on our YouTube channel. There's a whole segment about how to hold your political appointees accountable. And it's not as hard as people think it is in terms of picking up the phone, sending an email, knocking on their door, at least before pre-COVID and hopefully after COVID. And I think that that's good for young people to know, as well as older people, that they are working on our behalf. So we have the right to hold them accountable for all of the things that they promised that they would do when we elected them. So thank you for bringing that back up.
And the thing that reminds you when you work in a public office in that way is people will call and say, I pay your salary. You work for me.
Right.
And sometimes you have to remind people that I do understand that, but I also pay taxes. So am I self-employed? Or some days, it's when it's a tough day. I haven't had a raise in a long time. I'm glad you called. Let's talk about that.
Exactly. So Roz said, my family was just having this discussion on our family Zoom. Why is the Voting Act not law? And what do we need to do for this to become a law?
Okay, so I am not a constitutional scholar, but I'm going to do my best to answer in the best that I am knowledgeable about. The Voting Rights Act is something that has to be reauthorized periodically because it's at the federal level. And because election law actually lives at the state level, as it's currently written, the federal government doesn't have the authority to direct states to implement certain laws as it pertains to elections. So there's a limitation between what the federal government can do with the terms to election law and what states have the rights to do. So in the jurisdiction of states' rights, and states having the branch that supersedes the federal government in terms of voting law, the states are the prevailing authority on how they choose to write laws, pass laws, implement them at their level. And to illustrate that, each state has a different set of laws for how they conduct and govern elections. And then once you get to the county, each county then has another set of laws of how they implement said laws at the state level. So for as many counties as you have, you're going to have a slightly different way that those laws are being implemented. So there's a push-pull between wanting to have there be some uniformity at the federal level and also not superseding the rights of states in terms of how they choose to implement said laws. I don't know that that fully is a right answer, but it's what we have today. Now, in terms of how we decide to change that, that's a conversation that we have to have with our members of Congress.
Do you think that there should be across every state and federally the same voting laws?
Ask your question again. You froze for a second.
Oh, sorry. Do you think that across states as well as federal, so your local and federal level, that voting laws should be the same?
I would say yes and no. I would say yes if they are progressive, if they are inclusive, if they are opportunities to expand the electorate. But I would say no if they're going to have limitations on who is allowed to participate. Because, for example, there are states that do not allow people who are formerly incarcerated to vote once they have completed or served their time and been completed their process. I think that's criminal. So I wouldn't want there to be federal law that might exclude a population from being able to participate. But if there is law that's going to say we're going to allow all formerly incarcerated individuals who are no longer serving active prison time to be able to vote, then yes. I also think if we're going to allow 16 and 17-year-olds to pre-register to vote, absolutely. If we're going to allow 17-year-olds who will be 18 before a primary election takes place to be able to vote in said primary, then yes. But if we're going to have limitations on who's allowed to vote, then absolutely not.
Agreed. I think I would say the same thing in terms of the most liberal voting rights should be offered to everyone. So does anyone have any more questions? I usually try to stick to about 25 to 30 minutes. We're going on almost 40 minutes. The conversation was really good. If you have some questions, drop them in the chat and we'll get to them. But I did want to ask you, Patrice, from a personal standpoint, 2 questions. What are your plans for next year? And then if you could pick 1 to 2 things that you would want all of your friends, families, and supporters to do, what would those things be?
So for this year, I will say that my word is optimism. And I am optimistic and hopeful about being able to create the change that I'm interested in seeing, being able to continue to work to disrupt the barrier that exists between local government and people, being able to continue to galvanize people to amplify people power in terms of moving on local policy. Those are the things I'm still passionate about doing, committed to doing, and wanting to do more of in the years to come. Now, if I were going to give advice of 1 to 2 simple things people can do, I will say this. The first thing is when you are called for jury duty, please respond. Don't try to get out of it. Don't try to make excuses. Don't try to find ways to not go. Because when you opt yourself out of the process, you are denying a person the opportunity to have your voice in the process of deliberating on the outcome of someone else's future that looks like you.
That was a great
being a part of the jury process, I think, is where we can tend to fall down. So, and I don't know how it is but California has 1-day jury service, or say LA County has 1-day jury service, where you don't actually have to go in unless they call your group number. So you may be on call for a week, but you'll have to maybe go in 1 day. And in that 1 day that you report, if they don't put you on a case, your service is considered complete.
It's like that here in Maryland too. When you get called, you have to call to see if like your group or your number was picked. I have only served on 2 actual cases in my years on earth in terms of jury duty. Most often we go, we sit, we wait, then they decide, if you're needed for the day. And I was on a manslaughter case for one time, and that was a eye opener. Definitely an eye opener. So if you've never actually done jury duty, you should get the experience. And I agree, that was a great thing to tell everyone to do. We have another question. Wasn't I guess isn't or are the voting laws different for American Indians?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that either. I'm sorry, Stephanie. Don't know the answer to that one. So
maybe
we are
do some research and find that out and then post it in the comments later.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, that would be totally grateful for you to do that. Well, thank you so much, Patrice. I totally enjoyed having you. You already know that you and I can talk for hours.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Oh, you are so welcome. And I just want to thank everyone today for joining us. Thank you for having me back in your homes and on your cell phones. And I miss you guys so much, but I had to take a break to take care of some personal goals and things that I needed to do, including resting for myself. But, during that break, if most of you don't know, I got a master's degree in Chief Information Officer Leadership. So that was exciting, learned a lot of things. I'll be sharing some things that I've learned here because, again, I want everyone to dream big and to win big. And thank you guys so much. If you are not already following Patrice, follow her on Instagram at PatriceM08. You can follow me at I am Renay Butler. I'm on all platforms as I am Renay Butler. I just decided today to do a room on Clubhouse. I have a Clubhouse account now. Look for our room. It's going to be called Dream Big. I'll be doing it with Olivia Butler and a few other people, and we'll be talking about business and leadership. We'll probably be doing that once a week on a schedule. So
okay,
you'll be able to find me a couple different places. Super excited about that as well. And again, thank you, Patrice, and thank you, everyone. And we will see you next Sunday at 7 p.m. sharp. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you.